Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. This is Dr. Tidman. This presentation will outline the second in a five-part series of how to interpret lab results from a metabolic health perspective. Today's topic is on hemoglobin A1C and fasting insulin. So I have a bit of a soapbox about these, so hopefully you'll be able to catch some of the importance of why I think these two markers are critical for health. Please remember that these presentations are for informational and educational purposes only. If you want to make some changes in either your medications or your lifestyle, please consult your own medical team. I'm a metabolic health practitioner, so a lot of what you'll hear will be from my perspective on the relationship of these tests that you have run and your metabolic health. So, common metabolic health biomarkers, hemoglobin A1C and fasting insulin, but I'll guarantee you that many of you, your doctors don't run these every year, and I'm here to tell you that they should. These two blood markers are the best way to determine what your body is doing with the glucose that you're consuming and the carbohydrates. I'll review the labs themselves, their purpose, and some of the lab ranges or values that are pretty common, and then the relationship of these values to metabolic health, some of the common approaches that I would recommend through my tips and takeaways. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. This really helps me, and you'll be informed then of the next videos in this series. I'm posting these videos every Monday. So what is hemoglobin A1C? A hemoglobin A1C is a typical average fasting glucose level for the past 3 months. There are different ranges that we use to determine how your body is handling glucose over the long haul, that is, over the last 3 months. Less than 5.7 on your A1C means you don't have diabetes. From 5.7 to 6.4 indicates that you have prediabetes. And then when your hemoglobin A1C is over 6.5, you're now, congratulations, in the type 2 diabetes range. As a metabolic health practitioner, I like for this A1C to be below 5.6. So many people in the United States are walking around with diabetes and don't even know it. And pre-diabetes is kind of a misnomer term because it's like being pregnant. You either are or you aren't. And in my opinion, if your A1C is 5.9, you're headed in the wrong direction. So remember that pre-diabetes doesn't mean that you almost have a problem. It means you already have a problem. So what is fasting insulin? I bet you've never heard of it because I'll bet your doctor never runs it. So it used to be that we only used hemoglobin A1C to determine if somebody was diabetic. However, we know that the pancreas puts out insulin to control our blood glucose. So what if you have an A1C of 5.6? You think you're home free? Well, maybe we would run a fasting insulin on you, and then if your insulin is elevated, what that tells me is that your pancreas is working really hard to keep your glucose under control. In my opinion, as a metabolic health practitioner, if you have an A1C of 5.6, but your fasting insulin is 50, you're diabetic. Your pancreas hasn't given up yet. But once it does, that glucose will rise. So it's a very delicate balance between your insulin and your glucose to keep your glucose under control. So, in my opinion, and those of us in metabolic health feel that you have to run both. The problem is traditional MDs don't know much about fasting insulin, so they don't run it. Once you understand how important it is to keep the insulin low and keep the glucose low, so if you keep your glucose low, guess what? Your insulin will be low because your pancreas doesn't need to work that hard. But even if your A1C is under 5.6, if your insulin is cranking out in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, you're diabetic and your body is fighting hard to keep that glucose down. But eventually, the beta cells in your pancreas will burn out and you'll be fully diabetic at that point. So when you go to your doctor for annual blood work, ask them to run a fasting insulin test as well as your hemoglobin A1C. If they say, oh, you don't need that, insist that they run it. If they still won't run it, there are ways you can order this for yourself. There are online laboratory sites that you can go to order your own lab work, which is really quite reasonable. Own Your Labs is one of them. So I would highly recommend that every 6 months you have your A1C and your fasting insulin checked. Then you can make the dietary changes you need to protect your pancreas, to lower your glucose, and to lower your risk of becoming diabetic. What are some other ways you can do that? Well, if you've watched these videos, you know these are my common tips and takeaways. These are good for all of your metabolic markers. Adopt a ketogenic diet with your fats 60 to 70%, your proteins 20 to 25%, and your carbohydrates really low, under 5% of your daily calories. Take your coconut or MCT oil every day for the anti-inflammatory effects and other positive metabolic effects of blood ketones. And naturally, what's the best way of telling how your body is dealing with glucose? Test it at home. So, obtain a blood glucose and ketone meter. I personally like and use the Keto Mojo blood glucose and ketone meter. It's one of the most reasonable meters on the market, and the supplies are very reasonable. You really want your daily fasting glucose to be below 100. So if it's not, and if your A1C is elevated and your insulin is elevated, the best way you can take control of that is to test every morning before your first meal. Of course, fasting is a great way to lower your blood glucose and therefore lower your blood insulin levels. Exercise is another good way to control your blood glucose because guess what? Muscles act as a glucose sink. They remove a lot of excess glucose from your bloodstream. So developing muscle is a positive change for your health. Of course, address the microbiome if you're having trouble even absorbing some of the nutrients that you're consuming. For those of you with low vitamin D, take a vitamin D supplement. Here's my salt remedy if you're having trouble with muscle cramps or if your sleep is dysregulated. Salt is a good way to help that. Drink a lot of water, keep your hydration up, and test your blood work every 6 months. Most doctors won't order it, but once a year. Ask them to order it every 6 months, especially if there's some things you're working on. If they won't, then order your own. Go to ownyourlabs.com, or Life Extensions is another one. There are many out there on the internet where you can order very reasonably priced lab work for yourself and start tracking your labs. This is the reference that I used for the ranges that you saw on the presentation. And here are my email addresses. If you have any questions about this video or any of the 5 videos in this 5-part series entitled Bloodwork 101, email me at melanietidman@gmail.com. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications so you'll be notified of the next videos in this 5-part series. Thanks again for joining me. Take care, everyone.